2 inches. That is how much rear suspension travel Harley-Davidson gave the Sportster S when it launched in 2021. And if you have ever hit an expansion joint on I-40 outside Flagstaff at 75 miles an hour on 1, you already know what that number feels like. It arrives at the base of your spine about 1/10 of a second before you hear yourself swear into your own helmet. 2 inches. A dinner plate has more give than that. And here is the part that should make every rider over 50 sit up. Harley-Davidson quietly fixed it for 2025, increasing rear-wheel travel by 60% to 3.2 inches, which is a company with 120 years of engineering history admitting in the only language corporations actually speak, a redesigned part number E, that the complaint was real the whole time. So if the factory itself concedes that suspension travel is the difference between riding at 55 and hurting at 55, why is nobody applying that same math to the rest of the cruiser market? That is what the next 15 minutes are about. By the end of this, you are going to know exactly which 7 cruisers are compressing your lumbar spine every mile you ride them, which 4 let you keep riding into your 60s and 70s without a standing appointment for an epidural, and why the single worst offender on this entire list is a motorcycle that dealers deliberately steer riders over 50 toward, using the word comfort while they do it. It is not the bike you are guessing right now. It is not the obvious one. And if you sign paperwork on the wrong one of these this weekend, you will not find out at the test ride. You will find out somewhere around month 4, and by then, you are looking at a trade-in conversation where you eat 20 to 25% of the purchase price just to get out from under a bike your body rejected. Here is the uncomfortable part I will keep saying until somebody argues with me in the comments. The 2 features every salesman uses to close a rider over 50, floorboards and a low seat height, are 2 of the strongest predictors that the bike is going to hurt you. Before we name a single model, you need the 3 variables, because without them this is just opinion, and opinion is what got you here. Variable 1 is rear wheel travel, not shock length, not spring rate, not what the brochure says about plush travel, measured at the wheel, in inches. Every impact your rear tire takes has to be absorbed by something. If the suspension has 2 inches of stroke to work with, it runs out of stroke on anything bigger than a lane marker, and the remaining energy does not disappear. It goes into the frame, through the seat pan, into your pelvis, and up the stack of vertebrae that have been carrying you around for 5 decades. This is not a comfort preference. This is physics, with a return address. Variable 2 is control position relative to your hip. This is the one nobody talks about, and it matters more after 50 than anything else on the spec sheet. When your feet are placed forward of your hips, mid-controls pushed out, or full forward controls, your pelvis rotates backward, and your lumbar spine goes from its natural inward curve into a flattened or reversed one. Hold that shape for an hour. Now hold it for 4 hours on a Sunday ride with your buddies. In your 30s, the surrounding muscle absorbs it. In your 50s and 60s, the discs absorb it instead, and discs do not have the recovery curve muscle does. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you gotten off a bike after a long day and needed 30 seconds standing next to it before you could walk normally? That is not age, that is geometry. Variable 3 is seat-to-bar reach combined with seat height. Here is where the industry has been quietly selling riders over 50 a lie. A low seat height feels like safety. You can flat-foot it at the light. The bike does not feel like it is going to get away from you. The salesman notices you exhale when your boots touch the ground. But a low seat forces a more acute hip and knee angle. It puts your body closer to the rear axle, where impacts arrive with less leverage to dissipate them, and on almost every bike it comes packaged with reduced suspension travel, because the manufacturer got that low number by taking the travel away. Low seat height and short travel are not independent features. They are the same decision wearing 2 different hats on the showroom floor. And one motorcycle on this list fails all 3 of those variables while carrying a badge that says comfort on it. That bike is not number 7. It is not number 5. It outsells every other model in this video. It is the bike your riding group will defend in the comments before they finish watching, and it is sitting at number 1. Everybody watching right now has a name in their head. I would bet money it is the wrong one. Keep it there. We will find out together. 7. Harley-Davidson Sportster S. Start with the honest offender. The Sportster S never once told you it was comfortable. Harley-Davidson built it around the liquid-cooled Revolution Max 1250T, 1,252 cubic centimeters, 121 horsepower at 7,500 revolutions per minute, and 93 pound-feet at 6,000 revolutions per minute, wrapped it in a fat front tire and a high-mount 2x1x2 exhaust, priced it at $15,999, and pointed it directly at a rider who wanted to feel something. What it did not tell you was that the original 2021 through 2024 bikes came with 2.0 inches of rear-wheel travel and a non-adjustable fork, and that the mid-mount controls sit far enough forward that a 5'9" rider ends up in exactly the pelvis-rotated posture we just described. So why is it only number 7? Because it was never dishonest about what it was. And because, credit where it is due, Harley-Davidson actually fixed it. The 2025 and 2026 bikes carry 3.2 inches out back with a fully adjustable Showa piggyback shock and a revised 43mm inverted fork without raising the seat height. That is a real engineering answer to a real complaint. But it also means something uncomfortable for a lot of you watching. If you bought a 2022 or 2023 Sportster S and your lower back has been telling you something for 3 years, you were not imagining it, you were not getting old, and the manufacturer has now confirmed it in writing. What do you do with that information? Nothing if you are trading. Everything if you are shopping used. Because those older bikes are the ones flooding the pre-owned market right now at prices that look like a bargain. 6. Indian Scout Bobber. Indian does not even hide it. Go to their own product page for the Scout Bobber right now and read the marketing copy. Slammed 2-inch suspension, described as a feature. And it is a feature, visually. The stance is genuinely one of the best-looking things in the American cruiser market, and at $12,999 with the Speed Plus 1250 making a claimed 111 horsepower and 82 pound-feet, the value proposition is not the problem. The problem is that 2.0 inches of rear travel paired with a 25.6-inch seat height puts you directly on top of the rear axle with almost nothing between you and the road surface. Reviewers have described the rear end as riding a pogo stick over gravel. That is not a manufacturer defect, that is the design brief being executed perfectly. So here is the question that actually matters. Are you buying this bike for the 45-minute ride to the coffee shop, or are you buying it because you told yourself you would finally do that trip through the Blue Ridge Parkway this fall? Because it is superb at one of those, and it will end the other one early. Notice something about numbers 7 and 6. Both are 2-inch bikes, both are honest about it, and both sit at the bottom of this list precisely because of that honesty. The bikes that climb from here are the ones that promised you something else. 5. Honda Fury. The Fury is where we cross from honest into structural. Honda built a factory chopper, a raked-out front end, an enormous wheelbase, a 1,312 cubic centimeters V-twin, and a silhouette that stops conversations in parking lots. The chopper geometry does something specific to your body that has nothing to do with the shock. When the front wheel is pushed that far out ahead of you, the bike's weight distribution shifts rearward, which means a disproportionate share of every road impact arrives at the back of the motorcycle, where you are sitting. Combine that with full forward controls, and you have removed your legs from the equation entirely. On a bike with mid-controls, your knees and hips act as a secondary suspension system. You unweight the saddle over a bad patch without even thinking about it. Try that with your feet stretched out in front of you. You cannot. Your legs have become passengers, and every single impact that your legs would have absorbed now travels straight up your spine, because you have surrendered the only adjustable suspension component you actually own: your body. 4. Yamaha Bolt R-Spec. The Bolt R-Spec is here almost as an apology, and I want to be careful because this bike is genuinely good value at around $8,999 with a 942 cubic centimeters air-cooled V-twin that will run forever. Its 2.8 inches of rear travel with piggyback reservoir shocks is meaningfully better than the 2.0 inches on the two bikes we just covered, 40% more, which is not nothing. But the Bolt carries a short wheelbase and a compact rider triangle, and that combination does something people underestimate. It shortens the time between impacts. On a long wheelbase bike, a road seam hits the front, then the rear, with enough separation that the two events feel like two events. On a short wheelbase bike, they compress into one hit. Your spine does not experience that as two fives. It experiences it as 110, which is why the Bolt rides worse than its spec sheet suggests, and better than its price does. And now the reset, because we are at the point in a video like this where most people leave, and I would rather you knew exactly why I am about to say what I am about to say. The floorboard lie. Every rider over 50 who walks into a dealership gets shown floorboards within about 90 seconds. The pitch is always the same. You can move your feet. You can shift position. It is easier on your knees. All of that is true. Here is what does not get said. Floorboards on almost every cruiser in this market are positioned forward of the rider's hip, not below it. So the moment you use them, you have adopted the pelvis-rotated posture we identified as variable 2. Floorboards do not fix your riding position. They make an already compromised position more tolerable for longer, which is a different thing entirely, and arguably a worse one, because tolerable for longer is exactly how you accumulate the mileage that does the damage. Now pair that with the low seat height that sold you on the bike in the first place, and understand what I am telling you. All three bikes remaining on this list have both, every one of them, floorboards and a sub-27-inch seat. The two features you were told to look for are the two features shared by the three worst bikes in this video. I want to hear from the floorboard guys in the comments on this one, and I mean that sincerely. Tell me I am wrong, and tell me why. 3. Harley-Davidson Fat Bob. Let me describe someone. He is 54. He rode in his 20s, sold the bike when the first kid arrived, and spent 22 years telling himself he would get back to it. Last spring he did. And when he walked into that dealership, he did not walk toward the touring bikes, because touring bikes are what his father rode, and he is not his father yet. He walked toward the aggressive one, the Fat Bob, with the inverted fork and the upswept exhaust and the dual headlamp that looks like it is angry about something. He bought the bike that told him he was not old. Now he does a set of stretches in the garage before he rides, and he has never mentioned it to a single person in his riding group. If any part of that landed, you already know why the Fat Bob is number 3. It is a genuinely capable machine with better suspension than anything below it on this list. But it is bought overwhelmingly by riders who choose it as a statement about their own age, and then ride it like the touring bike they refuse to buy. 300-mile days, aggressive rider triangle, hands lower than the shoulders, all of it. The bike is not lying to you. You are lying to yourself, and the bike is just the receipt. 2. Suzuki Boulevard, M109R. The M109R is an engineering achievement, and I will not pretend otherwise. 1,783 cubic centimeters, acclaimed 128 horsepower and 118 pound-feet, a 240-section rear tire, priced around $15,799. It is the most bike per dollar in the Japanese power cruiser segment, and it has been for the better part of 2 decades. And that 240 rear tire is the whole problem. A tire that wide has a nearly flat profile and an extremely stiff carcass, which means it transmits road texture directly into the chassis before the suspension gets a vote on the matter. Add a 67.3-inch wheelbase, a 27.8-inch seat, and forward-set controls, and you have a machine that punishes you in a way that is hard to attribute to any single component, which is exactly why owners do not attribute it to the bike. Here is the polarizing part, and I have been building to it since the 2-inch number in the first 15 seconds. Riders keep this motorcycle roughly 3 years longer than they should, not because it is reliable, though it is. Because selling it feels like an admission. It feels like conceding something about your own body that you are not ready to concede in front of the people you ride with. And I think that is the single most expensive thing in this entire video, because those are the 3 years where the depreciation curve is steepest and the physical cost is highest at the same time. If that made you uncomfortable, say so. I would rather have the argument than the silence. Now, before the number one, the practical part, and I am going to be specific about what does and does not work. 6 of the 7 bikes we have covered can be materially improved with 2 purchases, and the order matters. First, rear shocks, progressive rate springs, or a proper aftermarket rear unit. On the 2021 to 2024 Sportster S, aftermarket shocks from the European suspension houses have achieved over 3 inches of rear travel purely through internal redesign, which is the same result Harley-Davidson engineered into the 2025 bike. Second, and only second, a seat with genuine lumbar support and a rear section that lets you shift fore and aft rather than locking you into one position. Do the shock first. A better seat on a bike with no travel is a thicker piece of foam between you and the same impact, and foam does not have a stroke length. Links are in the description if you want the specific parts. One thing though, none of this fixes number one. Number one has a different problem entirely, and it is not a component problem. 1. Harley-Davidson Heritage Classic. Here is the bike. And I know exactly what is happening in the comments right now, because the Heritage Classic is the motorcycle that gets recommended to riders over 50 more than any other cruiser in America. It has the windshield, it has the leather bags, it has the Milwaukee 8 1,917 cubic centimeters, 98 horsepower and 120 pound-feet arriving at 2,500 revolutions per minute, and for 2026 it starts at $19,999. On paper, it has 4.4 inches of rear-wheel travel, which is the most of anything in the Softail line, and roughly double what the Scout Bobber gives you. So how is it number one? Because the Heritage Classic is the only bike on this list where the failure is not the machine, it is the mismatch. This motorcycle is cross-shopped against and sold as an alternative to full touring bikes. Riders buy it to do touring mileage. 2-up, loaded bags, 400-mile Saturdays, the trip you have been planning for 3 years. And what they are actually buying is a 26.3-inch laden seat height sitting on a single hidden monoshock with preload adjustment only. No compression damping adjustment, no rebound adjustment, 1 dial for 1 variable arch, plus floorboards forward of the hip and 4.7 inches of static ground clearance. That chassis is superb for 150 miles. It was never given the suspension hardware to defend you at 400 2-up with weight in the bags. Remember variable 3, the one about a low seat putting you closer to the rear axle. The Heritage Classic has the lowest laden seat height in this entire video. Remember the floorboard lie. It has floorboards. Remember the low seat equals less travel trade. It has the most travel of any Softail, and it is still less than half what a real touring chassis gives you. So the answer to the question I planted 14 minutes ago, which bike fails all 3 variables while wearing a comfort badge, is the one your dealer will walk you to, the one your buddy swears by, and the one that will hurt you. Not because it is a bad motorcycle, but because you were sold it for a job it was never engineered to do. The 4 that don't: Honda Goldwing Tour, BMW R18 Transcontinental, Indian Springfield, Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 Vaquero. Score these against the same 3 variables, and the picture inverts immediately. The Honda Goldwing Tour is the reference standard and everybody knows it. Double wishbone front suspension, Pro-Link rear, and a rider triangle where your feet sit below your hips instead of ahead of them, which is the single most important thing on this list, and the one thing you cannot buy aftermarket. The BMW R18. Transcontinental takes the opposite route to the same place. An enormous 1,802 cubic centimeters boxer, a wheelbase long enough to separate front and rear impacts into 2 distinct events, and a riding position that keeps your spine in its natural curve. The Indian Springfield is the one I would put a rider over 55 on if they refused to give up the classic American silhouette, because Indian gave it a genuine air-adjustable rear shock, meaning you can retune it in the parking lot when you add a passenger, which is exactly the capability the Heritage Classic does not have. And the Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 Vaquero at $19,999 is the value play, matching the Heritage Classic dollar for dollar with a longer wheelbase and a full frame-mounted fairing that takes wind pressure off your shoulders. And wind pressure at 70 miles an hour is a load your neck and upper back carry for every hour you ride, which is the fourth variable nobody puts on a spec sheet. Note what happened there. The cheapest of the four beats the most expensive on wheelbase and on wind management, and the Goldwing only pulls ahead when you are actually doing the mileage that justifies it. But there is a variable none of these four control for, and it is the one that decides this for most of you, not travel, not geometry, resale. Because the real question is not which bike hurts you at 55, it is what the bike is worth on the day your back finally makes the decision for you instead of you making it. And when you run the 36-month numbers on those four bikes I just recommended, 3 of them lose more of their value than every single motorcycle on the bad list, including the Heritage Classic. Which raises a question I do not think this channel has been honest enough about yet. What is the actual dollar cost of buying the comfortable bike too late?